Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. In this video, we'll learn how to use the sensoryFeedback modifier that Apple introduced for SwiftUI. Previously, we were using UIImpactFeedbackGenerator for haptic feedbacks. This is the modern way. You can either use integer, string, date, UUID, and Boolean to trigger sensor feedback. I'll demonstrate all of them along with the different feedback types. Let's get started. I'll first demonstrate a light impact using an integer trigger. And I'll use a state variable for this demonstration, but it can be any number in your app's context. When I click this button, the number will increase. I want to trigger sensor feedback on any change of this integer variable, so we'll use a sensor feedback modifier with a light impact and the trigger will be the light trigger. Now let me use a string to trigger sensor feedback. I'll use a UUID string to simply change the string with a button in this demonstration, but you can use any string in your app to trigger this haptic feedback. This sensor feedback will generate a medium haptic feedback when the text changes. Let's also demonstrate how you can use a date to provide haptic feedback. This button will update the date every time we tap on it. You can use a date in your app's context to trigger haptic feedback. I'll display the time change on the screen. Now we can use sensor feedback to provide heavy haptic feedback when the timestamp changes. You can also use feedback types that are already present in the iOS environment for specific cases, such as success, warning, and error. Let's start with success. We'll trigger it with an integer value. This is used in the iOS system, for example, when you send something using AirDrop successfully. Let's also try the warning haptic feedback. I'll use a Boolean variable to trigger this one. Lastly, you can use error sensor feedback to signal the user that something went wrong. I'll use a UUID to trigger this example. These three sensor feedback types are the most familiar ones in the iOS system since users have already encountered them at the system level. I also want to demonstrate how you can use the sensor feedback modifier based on user preferences in your app. You can use AppStorage to persist these preferences. I'll demonstrate this on the last example. Here, simply return the haptic feedback variable. The closure requires an old and new values, which you can use to customize the sensor feedback further. In this case, if haptic feedback is true, the sensor feedback will fire, but if it's set to false, it will not. You can give users an option to toggle this in your settings view or anywhere else you find appropriate. Run this example on a physical device to feel the haptic feedbacks. That's it. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video to support us.